Okay, welcome back in. I'm very behind on the hockey playoff review, so I'm going to review Sunday, April 20th to Wednesday, April 23rd. So on Sunday, we had a total of 3 games starting in Carolina as the Hurricanes played host to the New Jersey Devils. Jalen Chatfield will kick things off in the first, getting his first goal of the season, of the playoffs I should say, assisted by Robinson and Roslovic, 2:24 of the opening frame. Logan Stankoven will get his first goal of the playoffs from Martinook and Slavin, 6:37 of the second period, increasing the lead to 2-1 in favor of Carolina. Stankoven will get his second goal of the game, 13:08 of the second period, on the power play from Taylor Hall and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, giving the Hurricanes a 3-0 lead in the second. Nico Hischier would finally score with 1:09 to go in the second, getting his first of the playoffs from Bratt and Pesce, cutting the lead to 3-1. And then late in the third period, the Devils pulled their goalie. Unfortunately, they're not able to tie it up, and Andrei Svechnikov would get his first goal of the playoffs from Taylor Hall, who got his second assist of the game, increasing the lead to 4-1 with 2 minutes and 28 seconds to go. So the Hurricanes would take Game 1 of this best of 7, 4-1. The Battle of Ontario, as the Toronto Maple Leafs played host to the Ottawa Senators. It's the first time that these two teams have met in over 2 decades. Oliver Ekman-Larsson will get his first goal of the playoffs from Scott Laughton and Järnkrok, 7:09 of the opening frame. Mitch Marner will get his first of the playoffs from his buddy Austin Matthews, 12:18 of the first, increasing the lead to 2-0. Drake Batherson will get his first playoff goal from Dylan Cousins and David Perron, 16:18 of the first, cutting the lead to 2-1. John Tavares would increase the lead to 3-1, getting his first of the playoffs from William Nylander and Mitch Marner, 4:07 of the second period. Speaking of Nylander, he'd get on the goal scorer sheet himself, getting his first goal of the playoffs from John Tavares, 7:19 of the second period, increasing the lead to 4-1, and that was also a power play goal. Ridley Gregg would get his first goal of the playoffs from Amadio and Shane Pinto, 4 minutes exactly into the third, cutting the lead in half to 4-2. Morgan Rielly would increase the lead to 5-2, getting his first of the playoffs from Robertson and McMahon, 4:45 of the third. And then Matthew Knies would get a power play goal, 13:13 of the third, getting his first of the playoffs from Austin Matthews, who had 2 assists, and Mitch Marner, who also had 2 assists in the game, increasing the lead to 6-2, and that's where we'd stand at the end of regulation. The last game on Sunday took place in Vegas as the Golden Knights played host to the Minnesota Wild. Thomas Hertl would kick things off for Vegas, getting his first goal of the playoffs from Pietrangelo and Brandon Saad, 15:22 of the first period. Matt Boldy would get his first goal of the playoffs from Kaprizov and Ryan Hartman, 17:42 of the first period, tying the game up at 1. Pavel Dororiev would get his first goal of the playoffs, a power play goal from Shea Theodore and Thomas Hertl, 13:33 of the second period, giving the Vegas Golden Knights a 2-1 lead. Brett Howden would get his first goal of the playoffs from Nick Waugh and Noah Hannafin, 2:28 of the third period, increasing the lead to 3-1. Matt Boldy would get his second goal of the contest, assisted by Kaprizov, who had his second assist of the game as well. 11:46 of the third period, cutting the lead to 3-2. Minnesota would pull their goalie, and unfortunately they're not able to tie it up, as Brett Howden would get his second goal of the game unassisted, a power play goal, as well as an empty net goal with, I think it was like 0.1 second to go. That's when the puck crossed the line. So regardless, Vegas would have won the game, but they would double up on the Wild in Game 1 and take Game 1 4-2. On Monday, we had a total of 4 games, so let's dive into it. The Washington Capitals played host to the Montreal Canadiens in Game 1 of their best of 7. Alex Ovechkin would open up the scoring for the Capitals with 1 minute and 26 seconds to go in the first. He'd get his first of the playoffs on the power play from Tom Wilson and Dylan Strome. Anthony Beauvillier would get his first goal of the playoffs, assisted by Ovechkin and Dylan Strome, who had 2 assists in the contest. 12:09 of the second period. increasing the lead to 2-0. Cole Caulfield will get his first goal of the playoffs in the third, assisted by Patrick Laine and Lane Hudson, a power play goal, 10:32 of the third. Nick Suzuki would tie the game up with 4 minutes and 15 seconds to go, getting his first of the playoffs from Alex Carrier and Lane Hudson, who had 2 assists on the night. The game would need to go to overtime, and a crazy stat, Alex Ovechkin with the game-winning goal, his second of the contest, assisted by Beauvillier and Dylan Strome. And it's hard to believe this is the first time in Ovechkin's playoff history he had an overtime game-winning goal. Of all the 890-plus goals he's scored, this was the first time he scored a overtime winner. And he's played a lot of playoff games. And of course he did it against the team I cheer for. Isn't that ironic? All right, the Winnipeg Jets played host to the St. Louis Blues. Mark Scheifele would get his second goal of the playoffs, assisted by Dylan DeMello, 16:32 of the first. Jimmy Snuggerud, I believe, would tie the game up at 1 with 2 seconds to go, a power play goal from Buchnevich and Cam Fowler, so that we were all tied up at 1 heading into the second period. There was no scoring in the second. We have to jump ahead to the third, where Kyle Connor will get the game-winning goal, his second of the playoffs, from Perfetti and Mark Scheifele. 1:43 of the third period, the Jets would win Game 2, and they have taken a 2-0 lead in their best-of-7 series as the series shifts to St. Louis. All right, Game 2 between the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. Nathan MacKinnon would open up the scoring for Colorado in the first, getting his third goal of the playoffs on the power play from Makar and Jonathan Drouin, 8:48 of the first. Tyler Seguin would tie the game up at 1, getting his first goal of the playoffs, also on the power play, from Marchment and Jamie Benn, and that goal happened with 54 seconds to go in the first period, so we were all tied up at 1 heading into the second. Thomas Harley would break the tie, 3:40 in the second, getting his first goal of the playoffs from Steele and Bach, so the Stars had a 2-1 lead at that point. Jack Drury would get his first playoff goal as a member of the Colorado Avalanche, assisted by Logan O'Connor and Ryan Lindgren. 4:42 of the second period, tying the game up at 2. Logan O'Connor would put the Avs ahead 3-2 with 33 seconds to go in the second, getting his first goal of the playoffs, assisted by Lehkonen and Sam Girard. Evgeny Dononov would tie the game up in the third, getting his first goal of the playoffs, assisted by Wyatt Johnston. 10:13 of the third period. The game would need to be settled in overtime, and Colin Blackwell would get the game-winning goal, assisted by Sam Steele and Cody Ceci, 17:46 of the overtime frame. So with the victory, the Stars have now tied their best-of-7 series at 1 game apiece. And Game 1 between the Los Angeles Kings and the Edmonton Oilers, this was crazy. It was a one-sided affair for pretty much most of the game, and then it came back, and then the other team came back, tied it, and then anyway, I'm not going to spoil it. Andrei Kuzmenko would kick things off for the Kings in the first period, getting a power play goal, his first of the season, of the first of the playoffs, assisted by Kevin Fiala and Adrian Kempe. Quinton Byfield would increase the lead to 2-0, getting his first goal of the playoffs, assisted by Drew Doughty and Mikey Anderson, and that goal happened with 33 seconds to go in the first. Adrian Kempe would increase the lead to 3-0, getting his first of the playoffs from Kuzmenko and Kopitar, 14:47 of the second period, giving the Kings a 3-0 lead. Philippe Deneau would increase the lead to 4-0, getting his first of the playoffs, assisted by Quinton Byfield, and that goal happened with 2 minutes and 17 seconds to go in the second. The Kings had a commanding 4-0 lead. Leon Draisaitl would finally get the Oilers on the board with 6 seconds to go in the second, getting his first of the playoffs, assisted by Connor McDavid and Evan Bouchard. So the Kings had a commanding 4-1 lead heading into the third. Matthias Janmark would cut the lead in half, getting his first of the playoffs, assisted by Frederick and Jeff Skinner, 2:19 of the third period. At that point, it was a 4-2 lead in favor of the Kings. Kevin Fiala would score on the power play, 4:59 of the third period, getting his first of the playoffs, assisted by Adrian Kempe and Kuzmenko. So the Kings had a 5-2 lead with 15 minutes to go in the third. Corey Perry would score his first of the playoffs from Connor McDavid and Evan Bouchard, cutting the lead to 5-3, 7:43 of the third. Zach Hyman would score with 2 minutes and 4 seconds to go, getting his first goal of the playoffs, assisted by Connor McDavid, who had 3 assists in the game, and Corey Perry. Speaking of Connor McDavid, he'd get on the goal scorer sheet himself, getting his first goal of the playoffs from Leon Draisaitl and Evan Bouchard, and that goal happened with 1 minute and 28 seconds to go in the third. And just when it looked like this game might be heading to overtime, Deneau would get his second goal of the game with 42 seconds to go, assisted by Trevor Moore and Garikov. So a wild game to say the least. This definitely was like old-time hockey. 6-5 would be the final score. So the Kings have taken a 1-0 series lead in this best of 7. All right, Tuesday we had 4 games, so let's dive in. The Carolina Hurricanes played host to the New Jersey Devils in Game 2 of their best of 7 series. Jesper Bratt would kick things off for the Devils in the first, getting his first goal of the playoffs from Haula and Dougie Hamilton, 3:51 of the first period. Shane Gothenburg with his first goal of the playoffs from Blake and Aho, 2:57 of the second period, tying the game up at 1. Jordan Martinook would eventually get the game-winning goal, his first of the playoffs from Dmitry Orlov, 5:54 of the second period, and it was a short-handed goal at that. Late in the third, the Devils would pull their goalie. Unfortunately, they were not able to mount a comeback, and Seth Jarvis would get his first goal of the playoffs, assisted by Jordan Martinook, who had 2 assists so far. With 37 seconds remaining in the game, the Hurricanes would win by a final score of 3-1. They have now taken a 2-0 series lead over their division rival. All right, back to the Battle of Ontario as the Toronto Maple Leafs played host to the Ottawa Senators. Morgan Rielly would get his second goal of the playoffs from William Nylander and John Tavares, 3:43 of the first, putting the Leafs on top, 1-0. John Tavares would get his second goal of the playoffs on the power play from Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews, 8:20 of the first, giving the Leafs a 2-0 lead. Brady Tkachuk would finally get Ottawa on the board, 15:41 of the second period, getting his first goal of the playoffs, assisted by Claude Giroux and Thomas Chabot. Adam Gaudette would tie the game up at 2, 14:47 of the third, assisted by Clevin and Tim Stützle. This game would need to go to overtime, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Max Domi, who got his first goal of the playoffs, assisted by Sam Benoit, giving the Leafs a 3-2 victory, and they also have a 2-0 series lead in their best of 7. The Tampa Bay Lightning played host to the Florida Panthers. They finally got their series underway in Game 1 of their best of 7. Sam Bennett would open up the scoring for Florida in the first, getting his first goal of the playoffs, assisted by Sam Skovich, 3:44 of the first. Jake Gensel would get his first goal of the playoffs, tying the game up at 1. Power play goal from Kucherov and Victor Hedman, 12:21 of the first period. Sam Reinhart would put Florida on top, getting them a 2-1 lead. His first goal of the playoffs from Kulikov and Carter Verhaeghe, and that goal happened with 45 seconds to go in the opening frame. Nate Schmidt would get his first goal of the playoffs from Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett, 4:41 of the second period, putting the Panthers ahead 3-1. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip there. Matthew Tkachuk, who came off the LTIR, would get his first goal of the playoffs on the power play from Sam Reinhart and Andrei Markov. Andrei Barkov, sorry. 4:55 of the second period, giving the Panthers a 4-1 lead. Tkachuk would get his second goal of the game, obviously his second goal of the playoffs, on a power play, unassisted, 9:44 of the second period, putting the Panthers ahead up 5-1. Braden Point would finally stop the bleeding, cutting the lead to 5-2, 13:04 of the second period, getting his first goal of the playoffs from Ryan McDonough and Goncalves. Nate Schmidt would get his second goal of the game, his second goal of the playoffs, on the power play from Matthew Tkachuk and Andrei Barkov, 5:09 of the third period, putting the Panthers up 6-2, and that's where we'd stand at the end of regulation. So the Panthers have now taken a 1-0 series lead in this best of 7. And the last game from Tuesday took place in Vegas as they hosted Minnesota Wild in Game 2 of their best of 7 series. Matt Boldy would give Minnesota a 1-0 lead in the first, getting his third goal of the playoffs from Kaprizov and Brodin, 9:56 of the first. Marcus Foligno would increase the lead to 2-0, getting his first goal of the playoffs from Ryan Hartman. 11:35 of the first period, giving the Minnesota Wild a 2-0 lead. Matt Zuccarello would increase the lead to 3-0, assisted by Marcus Johansson. 17:15 of the first, increasing the lead to 3-0 in favor of the visiting team. Who saw this coming? I certainly didn't. Kirill Kaprizov would just keep adding to the goals. He would get his first of the playoffs from Matt Boldy. 3:59 of the second period. The Minnesota Wild had a 4-0 lead. Noah Hannafin would finally get Vegas on the board. 12:04 of the second period, unassisted. That'd be his first goal of the playoffs, cutting the lead to 4-1. Thomas Hertl would cut the lead in half, getting his second goal of the playoffs from Pietrangelo and Brandon Saad. 2:26 of the third. Vegas would pull their goalie with 2.5 minutes to go. Unfortunately, they were not able to get a goal. Kirill Kaprizov would score on the empty net, unassisted. That'd be his second goal of the game, obviously his second of the playoffs. And that goal happened with 2 minutes and 26 seconds to go in the third. So Minnesota would go into Vegas and get a split. So the series is now tied up at 1, heading back to Minnesota. All right, and finally, on Wednesday, April 23rd, 3 games to report. The Montreal Canadiens were continuing their series with the Washington Capitals in Game 2 of their best-of-7 series. Christian Dvorak would give Montreal their first lead of the series, getting his first goal of the playoffs from Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher. 1:16 of the second period. Connor McMichael would tie the game up at 1, getting his first of the playoffs, assisted by Radish. 3:47 of the second period, so they were all tied up at 1 at that point. Exactly 1 minute after that, Dylan Strome would give the Capitals a 2-1 lead, getting his first of the playoffs from Beauvillier and Leonard. So the Capitals had a 2-1 lead heading into the third. Connor McMichael would get an empty net goal with just 2 seconds to go, his second of the game, his second of the playoffs from Pierre-Luc Dubois and Tom Wilson. So the Capitals would win this one by a final score of 3-1, and they have now taken a 2-0 series lead over my beloved Montreal Canadiens. We'll see if they can bounce back in their games 3 and 4 at home. Speaking of Game 3, the Colorado Avalanche played host to the Dallas Stars. Valeri Nichushkin would open up the scoring for Colorado in the first, getting his first goal of the playoffs from Sam Girard and Malinsky. And I would love to be able to play the highlight, but I'm afraid I'm going to get a copyright. If you haven't had a chance to watch his goal, it was absolutely sick. It doesn't really do justice by me just saying that, but it's a really good goal. Jamie Benn would tie the game up in the third at 1, getting his first goal of the playoffs on the power play from Harley and Michael Granlund. 9:18 of the third period. For the second straight game, this game would need to go to overtime, and Tyler Seguin would get the game-winning goal, 5:31 in the overtime frame, his second goal of the playoffs, assisted by Marchment and Mikko Rantanen, the former Av. So not only did the Stars win this game by a final score of 2-1, but they've also taken a 2-1 series lead in this best-of-7. And the last game from Wednesday took place in Los Angeles as the Kings and Oilers played Game 2 of their best-of-7 series. In the first period, Brant Clark would open up the scoring for LA, getting his first goal of the playoffs from Warren Foegele and Philippe Deneau. 8:44 of the first, a power play goal to note. Quinton Byfield would get his second goal of the series, the second of the playoffs, assisted by Garikov and Warren Foegele. 4:14 of the second period. Andrei Kuzmenko would get his second goal of the playoffs on the power play from Adrian Kempe and Anze Kopitar. 10:37 of the second period, giving the Kings a 3-0 lead. Leon Draisaitl would finally get Edmonton on the board, 13:54 of the second, getting his second goal of the playoffs, assisted by John Klingberg. 13:54 of the second period. Victor Arvidsson would score against his former team, cutting the lead to 3-2, getting his first of the postseason, assisted by Brett Kulak and Pod Colson. 4:05 of the third period. Adrian Kempe would increase the lead to 4-2, getting his second goal of the playoffs, assisted by Anze Kopitar. 6:46 of the third, doubling up the lead to 4-2. Speaking of Kopitar, he'd get on the goal scorer sheet himself, his first of the playoffs, on the power play from Kevin Fiala and Adrian Kempe. 9:07 of the third, increase in the lead to 5-2. Adrian Kempe will get his second goal of the game from Kuzmenko and Kopitar. That's a pretty dangerous trio, to say the least. Increase in the lead to 6-2, 11:09 of the third. So I'll just click on the playoff bracket so you can see for yourself. So I'll start on the left-hand side. Winnipeg has a 2-0 lead in their best-of-7 series over the St. Louis Blues. The Dallas Stars have a 2-1 lead in their best-of-7 series over the Colorado Avalanche. On the bottom left, the Vegas Golden Knights and the Minnesota Wild are tied at 1 apiece in their best-of-7 series. The Los Angeles Kings have a 2-0 lead in their best-of-7 series. Scrolling back to the top on the right-hand side, the Toronto Maple Leafs have a 2-0 lead in their best-of-7 series over their provincial rival. And the Florida Panthers have taken a 1-0 lead over their series over the Tampa Bay Lightning. On the bottom right-hand of the corner, we have Washington Capitals. They have a 2-0 lead in their best-of-7 series over the Montreal Canadiens. And the Carolina Hurricanes have a 2-0 lead in their best-of-7 series over the New Jersey Devils. All right, as always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative as well. Until next time, and as always, take care.